It's no mystery that nowadays it is absolutely paramount to carry a weapon on you for self-defense, but people have unrealistic expectations on what exactly to carry. And lately, with the increased threat of public violence, people like to show off their truck guns, their brace pistols, or their subguns. So we really wanted to put to the test these different intermediate level setups and see what's actually viable for a platform to carry on you and augment your concealed carry weapon.
Yeah, so first things first, what do we mean by an intermediate level weapon? Well, we're talking about a go-between from your concealed carry pistol to something like a duty rifle that may be set up with light, laser, holographic sight, magnifier, that kind of a thing. Something that's easily concealable and portable, right? The only caveat we have for that is that these are not going to replace your CCW or your concealed carry weapon. These are only meant to augment that capability, right?
First, let's define what PDWs are. PDW stands for personal defense weapon, and they're typically larger frame than your average handgun that you would conceal in your waistband. So we chose a wide spectrum of weapons such as brace pistols, subguns, and pistol caliber carbines, as well as a full duty setup 300 blackout subsonic, because that can cover the vast majority of options that you'd be looking at to augment your CCW. We're going to dive into each category and talk about their pros and cons so that you can then decide which one is best for you.
This is not you're being charged with a knife, there's an active shooter right in front of you, you need to draw a weapon. This is not going to be that. The deploy time is going to be too long for you to effectively engage that target, right? This is for those situations where, hey, you just got home, maybe your door's kicked in, your windows are broken, your family's home, and you want a more capable platform than just your concealed weapon to go and clear that house. You can't wait for the police to arrive. You got to address it now, and you have a little bit of time to set up, right? So why would you want this PDW versus your concealed weapon, right? A couple things. The concealability is a major draw for your CCW. You don't lose your concealability with this, or you don't lose it as much, right? It'll still fit neatly in a bag, in a small duffel bag or backpack, whatever you need or you can carry on you. You can put it in your car, you can put it in your truck, and it's going to remain relatively inconspicuous. You're going to get more controllability as well with things like foregrips, braces, just things that are going to increase the chance of you hitting your target past what most people can hit with their pistols, which is roughly 25 yards, depending on your training, right? But this is going to give you more repeatability for hits at range and at distance. On top of that, the chassis allows you to carry more capability than you might with your CCW. Lights, lasers, better optics, something that you don't have to mount to the slide of your gun. It also allows you for that increased capability. Finally, it's a fairly cost-effective option. You look at some other subguns or dedicated PCCs, pistol caliber carbines, and those can get really expensive. Real draw to these chassis that you just stick your pistol in. One, you already have the weapon system, so there's no doing forms for the ATF or an FFL or something like that. They're oftentimes made of a relatively inexpensive polymer, so you can pick them up for a couple $100. With the pistol you've already got, you can load it in there and you're ready to go with that increased capability without breaking the bank.
So just like with anything, pistols with braces come with cons as well. One of the primary pros to carrying just your CCW is their concealability, and like you said, you can still conceal these, but it often has to be off-body. I know things like the Flux Raider and this Recover Tactical 2020 can be holstered, but you do need a proprietary holster in order to do so. So most of us are going to be carrying these in bags, in the truck, but it still can be hidden from public view. With that, your draw time is going to be a lot slower. Even in the testing that we did, we found that drawing these from a bag is a significant negative aspect to them and requires you to have the time and the space to deploy it effectively. Another consideration is the fact that these are still subject to pistol caliber ballistics. So unlike a 5.56 duty rifle in your truck, they might not perform as well at distance, although they still are very capable up close. while they are cheaper because of their material construction, they might be a little bit weaker. So just like in this Recover Tactical 2020, the optics rail on top is made of polymer, which could be subject to damage if you keep it in your truck or you keep it in your bag and it gets squished. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're choosing the correct PDW platform, but pistol braces are a fantastic option. So when it comes to PDWs, people usually think about subguns such as the MP5, MP7, B&T TP9, or the Chris Vector like we have here. And there are certainly some pros to having a subgun as your PDW. First and foremost, they're engineered and designed to perform as that role. So you're gonna get a lot better ergonomics, you're gonna have controls that are in better spots, and you're gonna either use a stock or a pistol brace that is meant to be used in that fashion. You're also gonna have a typically larger magazine capacity. So Chris Vector, using a Glock 17 round magazine, can be extended to 40 rounds, which is a huge upgrade from your pistol braces or your concealed carry weapon. Also, you're gonna typically see better construction, whether it's metal rail systems, more rail space for your enablers and your accessories, such as lights, optics, suppressors, whatever you may need. And it's just going to enable the platform to be overall better performing. But of all of those, the biggest pro to me is going to be that you have more control over the firearm versus your concealed carry weapon or your braced pistol. And that's gonna allow you to make more accurate hits. And when you're talking about personal defense, I would argue that's a more effective weapon system. However, there are a lot of cons to having something like this. As you can see, it is a lot larger frame than a braced pistol or my concealed carry. It is much harder to conceal, although it is possible. And with this Gen 2 Chris Vector, I don't have the folding stock, so I would have to get something like the Law Tactical Folder in order to make that a capability. With the Chris Vector here, it has the Super V recoil system, which allows the recoil impulse to go down and back rather than up and back like your concealed carry handgun does, or even in a braced pistol. And that's going to allow you to take faster and more accurate follow-up shots because your recoil is going to be much easier to handle, and therefore you can protect yourself a lot better. But with the larger frame, the premium parts, and the name brand that you're going to get when you go with something like a Chris Vector or an H&K, it is typically going to be a lot more expensive than buying the Flux Raider or the Recover Tactical 2020. Those are gonna be much more in a budget-friendly zone versus something like this. Also, you're kind of getting diminishing returns at that point. How much money are you spending on something like this, and how much performance is it actually going to give you? If you're gonna struggle to conceal it, and you're gonna have to keep it in your truck, which could be a downside for a lot of people, then you're basically spending more money to get a less effective system. Not only that, but the barrel length is not all that better, and I'm still shooting 9mm out of this, or there is a 45 ACP version, but you still have pistol caliber ballistics with the similar barrel length. So I'm not really getting that much better ballistic performance out of this weapon, but it is going to allow me to do different things in a better way than braced pistols or concealed carry weapons. So something to consider. So lastly, in the PDW category, we're gonna have truck guns. And specifically what I'm talking about here is truck rifles that you would leave inside of your truck, or you'd have to conceal in a very large bag. So this is a 300 Blackout subsonic suppressed rifle that I would consider most people's best choice for a truck gun. And this is great for a lot of reasons. It has better ballistics, caliber dependent obviously, but you have your familiar AR style platform with all of the same controls, all of your setup, optic, laser, suppressor, flashlight, everything you'd normally have on your fighting rifle. However, there are a lot of drawbacks to having a truck gun. Specifically, it's a lot larger. So even with this Law Tactical Folder I have on here, I can only get it down to about this size while still remaining suppressed. And if I wanted to take off the suppressor, that's great. It makes it even shorter, but now I'm losing the whole point of using subsonic rounds in the first place. So the Law Tactical Folder makes it a lot more compact and better to pack away inside of a bag or in my truck, but it doesn't really solve the problem of being concealed. And with a personal defense weapon, I would like to be able to bring it where I need it, not just leave it in my car. Also, even though it does have more rail space, better construction, and it's built to be functioning in a more fighting role, it's gonna be heavier, it's gonna be larger, it's gonna be a lot more expensive, especially once you start to throw on the enablers. I wanna thank Basecamp for the stats on this. He said that you are 5 to 7 times more likely to have your car broken into and your property stolen than you are to have to respond to something like an active shooter or a sheepdog type scenario where you're Christian Craighead going into a building on your own. So knowing that, I'm not really willing to store this in my car. And if you think about it, a car is just a really bad safe with windows. So if you wouldn't trust a safe with windows and a crappy lock to store your guns in, then why would you trust your car to store a rifle in for long periods of time, 24/7? So while it's great, I really don't think that this is gonna be the best option, and it's mostly built off of people's fantasies on responding to things that they hear about in the news. Ideally, with time and space, yeah, I'd love to have this on me at all times and keep it in my truck, but it's not something I'm really willing to risk losing for that one-off chance that I need it. I would rather have something like my concealed carry where I can carry this on my person at all times, conceal it very well, and I don't run into a lot of the issues, the cost, the size, the weight, the lack of concealability, just to have something that's slightly more capable. And when we're talking about 300 blackout subsonics, they kind of perform similar to 9mm or 45 caliber anyways when it comes to ballistics. So there's not really a whole lot to be gained here. It is sexy, it is the cool thing to have, but is it really that practical? So should you get a personal defense weapon? I think there's definitely some merit to having the concept and the preparedness side of things, whether it be absolute apocalyptic scenario or just a public scenario where there's an active shooter. I think there's merit to thinking about those things and realizing, hey, what platform would give me more capability in that environment? And I think truck guns do pose a lot of legal issues where you're running back to your truck to get your rifle and then choosing to go back in and re-engage the threat. I think you could have yourself tied up in court with that, not to mention the threat of your property being stolen right out of your truck and how likely that is to occur. Also with subguns, they are a little bit larger, a little bit heavier, harder to conceal, and they don't really provide that much better ballistics. They do allow you to have the control over the firearm, but so do the braced pistols. So this is a good option, I think, to carry in a bag, and it's definitely not going to replace your concealed carry handgun, but it could augment your abilities. So if you're carrying concealed inside the waistband and you have a backpack on you because of wherever you're walking, it would be a great idea to have a braced pistol just to give you that little extra capability. However, it is extremely important to realize that you definitely need the time and the space to deploy that properly. You need to get behind cover so that you're not just taking off your bag in the middle of a active shooter scenario, and you need to make sure that this is properly deployed so that you can actually use it for what it's designed to be used for. But it will allow you to engage at further distances with more accurate shots and quicker follow-up shots. So there's definitely some merit there. However, I think the answer, hands down, is just get really good with your concealed carry handgun. No matter how you carry it, whether it's appendix, 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock, or even outside the waistband, make sure you are training with it. Make sure you're quick to draw and quick to engage, as well as accurate and fast follow-up shots. Scenarios such as the Dickens active shooter mall scenario where he had to take down the threat immediately, he didn't have time to take off a backpack and deploy a braced pistol or a subgun, and he definitely didn't have time to run back to his truck and get a rifle that he had stowed there. So there's a lot of concerns, there's a lot of issues when it comes to replacing your concealed carry with something like this. But augmenting it is definitely a valid reason to carry something like a braced pistol. If you guys liked the video today, make sure you like, share, and comment down below what you are using for personal defense, whether it be your inside the waistband concealed carry handgun, all the way up to a truck gun, and why. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you in the next one.